With opening day just 8 days away, I'm hoping that the third time is the charm with my opening day roster projection. We'll talk about all that and more, and Rangers players clamoring for a Jordan Montgomery reunion on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 10 seasons, including all 5 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into today's episode, this show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Now, here we are on Wednesday, March 20th, 8 days away from actual opening day for the rest of Major League Baseball, but for the first time in 140 days, someone other than your Texas Rangers has won the last Major League Baseball game that counts. Woke up at 5 this morning just because I was so incredibly excited for the Soul Series. Dodgers versus Padres. Dodgers looked fine. Honestly, after one game, I feel like very overconfident in saying, nah, Rangers are fine. Rangers got this. It'll be just fine. But we are here to talk about the opening day roster and a report from Jon Heyman of the New York Post that gives me some more optimism that Jordan Montgomery is eventually going to end up back in a Texas Rangers uniform, maybe even by the time the season starts. But we are here to talk about the opening day roster projection version 3.0. Let's get to it. Let's start with the basics, which have changed a little bit since version 2.0. Starting at catcher, that one's not changed. That's still going to be Jonah Heim. But starting at first base is not going to be Silver Slugger, Gold Glove winner Nathaniel Lowe. That is going to go to, I am pretty darn sure, actually, maybe not starting on opening day, but for the vast majority, at least for the first couple weeks of the season, I think it's going to be Jared Walsh. I have loved what I've seen from him this spring. He came into camp and he was just looking to get himself right, just looking to work with the Rangers, hitting coaching staff. I talked a little bit about it on the last episode, the last edition of this, whether that was a couple weeks ago, however long it's been. But the things that he's done have worked. He's played in 14 games for the Rangers this spring. He's hitting .286 with an on-base over nearly .420 and a OPS of .990. 3 home runs are second most on the team, of course, only to young gun Wyatt Langford. But the guy has been crushing it. He's been absolutely crushing it. Strikeouts have been a little bit more than I would have liked. I mean, 7 walks to 14 strikeouts and 35 at-bats. I believe that's about 42 plate appearances. Still a little higher than you would like, but after the last couple of seasons that Jared Walsh has had, seeing him, showcase the power, the batter's eye, the contact ability that he had that made him an all-star years ago, that's a good sign for Jared Walsh in general. I mean, back when he was with the Angels in 2021, he had an .849 OPS for the full season. Just looked exceptional. 29 home runs that year, and I think he's still got that in him. After dealing with neurological issues and with injury issues the last couple of years, where he was just absolutely atrocious for the Angels, more atrocious in 2023 than 2022. But there's a good hitter in there. And the Rangers knew that when they signed him, and they knew that there was some work to be done for him, and they trusted their hitting coaching staff to get the best out of him, and I think they will. Now, how long he sticks on the roster after opening day, after Nathaniel Lowe gets back and plays first base every single day, I'm not sure how much of a roster spot there will be for him at that point, but I know that it's going to be him and Ezekiel Duran splitting time at first base. In Tuesday's game, Zeke Duran started his first game at first base of the spring. He started the only game at first base that Nathaniel Lowe didn't play in 2023. He also played an inning there in a blowout game when Nathaniel Lowe was pulled late. But yeah, it's going to be those two splitting time over there at first base, and I like that tandem. I like Nathaniel Lowe maybe a little bit more, but when one of your stars is hurt, and thankfully the Rangers haven't had that many hurt stars this spring, or at least they don't project to have that many hurt stars in the lineup come opening day with the progression of Corey Seager and Josh Young on their injury front. This is a pretty decent spot to land yourself at. Second base, it's going to be Marcus Semien. Shortstop, I think Corey Seager can be ready for opening day. I think he's going to be ready to play shortstop as well in that opening day lineup. And Josh Young over there at third base, the reigning AL starting all-star third baseman from this year. The outfield, left field, Evan Carter, Leo Taveras in center, Adolis in right, DH, Wyatt Langford, and hopping in left field occasionally, and occasionally bumping Evan Carter all over the rest of the outfield to give other guys more time off, or half days at DH. That is a pretty darn good outfield of Wyatt Langford, Evan Carter, Leo Taveras, and Adolis Garcia. Defensively, offensively, about as strong as you've got in outfield anywhere. Honestly, this might be the best defensive outfield in baseball. Offensively, when it's Evan Carter, Wyatt Langford, and Adolis Garcia, I think offensively it's the best outfield in baseball. I know that Atlanta has Acuna Jr. out there and Michael Harris in center field, and whoever's going to be playing left, whether it's Duvall or Kelnick, but I'd put this offensive outfield up there with basically anybody in baseball, and Wyatt Langford has removed all doubt. It would be more than malpractice at this point. It would just be, honestly, insanity at this point to leave Wyatt Langford off the opening day roster. I've talked about it ad nauseum. Yes, he's going to have some more development to do in the outfield defensively, and the main way he can do that is through game reps, and he's not going to be playing the outfield every single day if he's in the major leagues. But again, his bat is just too darn good. It's too good. He's already the second best hitter in this Rangers lineup, and the only reason he's not the first best hitter in this Rangers lineup is because Corey Seager's there, and he might just be the best hitter on the freaking planet. And Wyatt Langford is behind him, but not astronomically far behind him. And the other guys he's ahead of are guys like Marcus Semien and Adolis Garcia and Josh Young and Jonah Heim and Nathaniel Lowe, all of whom were all-stars or silver sluggers. That's the kind of company that he's keeping. That's that kind of company that he is ahead of. And there was this exchange that Evan Grant had with Bruce Bochy when asking about Wyatt Langford, and about the millionth time I'm sure he's asked Bruce Bochy, have you made a decision? Is Wyatt Langford going to be on the opening day roster? And Bruce Bochy said, we haven't made a decision yet. And Evan Grant pushed back and said, no, you haven't made an announcement yet. Meaning the decision was made long ago. And I tend to agree with Evan Grant on a lot of things, but this especially. This is not a question anymore. This is not we want to get... No, there is no question about it. This offense was exceptional last year. Adding Langford will make it even better this year. Adding a full season of Carter will make it even better this year, even deeper than it was last year. When you come off a world championship with an elite offense and you add one of the top hitting prospect in baseball, and a kid who is still designated as a rookie despite hitting third on a World Series winning team, that is a darn good team. That is a very deep team because the bench will include the likes of Ezekiel Duran, Josh Smith, and Travis Jankowski, as well as Andrew Kisner as the backup catcher. Nathaniel Lowe will be out until mid-April, so we'll see a lot of Zeke Duran over there at first base against lefties. We'll see Jared Walsh probably playing most of the time against righties. Maybe we'll see a little bit more Zeke Duran even against righties. I mean, he is an incredibly good hitter, and I have loved what I've seen from Zeke Duran this spring. Hasn't played a whole lot defensively at first base, but that's because he had to take up some time at shortstop and at third base because he is the Rangers' primary backup at shortstop and third base, despite also being the primary backup at first base. And, well, you don't really need a primary backup at second base when your second baseman has played all but one game of the last 3 seasons. You don't really need much of a backup there because you might get a game at second base that isn't Marcus Semien. And if Marcus Semien had any say, nobody else besides him is going to play a single inning at second base for this team. I've been really impressed with a lot of hitters this camp that aren't going to make this opening day roster. I've been very impressed with a lot of hitters that are going to make this opening day roster, mainly Wyatt Langford, Evan Carter. Evan Carter putting up some pretty solid numbers against lefties. I think the concerns about him hitting lefties are overblown. I think whatever concerns there have been about his defense, which because defensive metrics aren't grading him out as that great a defensive outfielder. I think those are frankly insane, because I think he's going to be a plus defender in center field and a double plus defender in left field. I mean, he's got insane speed. He's doesn't have the strongest arm, but you don't need that in left field. His routes are great. His reads are great. I mean, he is just a very good defensive outfielder. And this offense, I mean, if not for the Braves existing, and even with the Braves existing, I think this might end up being the best offensive team in all of baseball this year, which is really saying something. Coming up, we're going to talk about the starting rotation, an article by John Heyman of the New York Post talking about every Rangers player wanting Jordan Montgomery back. And is that going to be enough to push Chris Young and ownership to finally bring that tall lefty home? Right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there is no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash as well. Conference tournaments are already done, and it's time for the big dance. It is time to get in on the action. You test your skills on PrizePicks this season. It's the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. PrizePicks is so simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. We are coming up on Major League Baseball season, so you can get in on the action with Major League Baseball as well. It is tournament season. There's all kinds of different ways to get in on the action with PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download that app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's just that easy with PrizePicks. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for today, March 20th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for the best MLB season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, be the first to get local insight from MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it March 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or for free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Now, before we get to talking about the starting rotation and that article in the New York Post about Jordan Montgomery potential return, I did want to shout out a couple of hitters who I don't think are going to make the opening day roster, but really had a nice spring and turned my head and made me really excited about their future and really optimistic about what they're going to bring to this Rangers organization. Those guys are Justin Foscue, Davis Wenzel, Cam Cauley, Derek Hill. I think all those guys had really, really good springs. I mean, Justin Foscue did almost everything that he could to make the Rangers opening day roster, and he's done most everything that he could do for the last year or so. If not for the Rangers just having so many gosh darn hitters, it would have been, he would already be a major leaguer. He just would. Or if the Rangers were, trading him to some other team with a starting pitching surplus, I think he could start at DH or first base or maybe even second base for a lot of different teams in Major League Baseball. But at DH, the Rangers have the guy who's going to be the top hitting prospect in all of baseball. At second base, they have a guy who just finished third in MVP voting and literally never takes a day off. At first base, the everyday guy is going to be someone who has a Gold Glove and a Silver Slugger in Nathaniel Lowe. And in left field, well, that's going to be Evan Carter. There's just not a whole lot of room for Justin Foscue on this roster at this point, but having him there as your injury insurance is a great injury insurance policy. He's going to start the season in AAA, and he's going to force his hand. He's going to make his big league debut at some point this season. I feel very confident about that as well. Cam Cauley is not going to make his major league debut this season, but again, the kid is incredibly impressive with the glove, plays all the different infield positions, and whether his future is backup utility infielder or first division starter, that's going to depend on his bat. And his bat was fantastic this spring, hit .375 with an on base of .444 and a slugging percentage of .750. while playing 12 games, only 16 at-bats, but still, the kid was very impressive in his short sample size of big league spring training. As far as Davis Wenzel goes, I really liked his season last year. I think he's going to have a long big league career, probably not as an everyday guy, but as a very, very valuable bench bat. A guy who can play pretty much everywhere, got good on base skills, got good defensive skills, can play short, third, second, even a little bit of time in the outfield, and has got some pretty prodigious power when he gets into it. He had a great spring with a 972 OPS, but unfortunately, that is not good enough when this team is so loaded with hitters. Also, a good spring for Derek Hill. Decent fourth outfielder type, but the Rangers already have their fourth outfielder on a guaranteed deal in Travis Jankowski. And, I guess it's also Wyatt Langford, who's going to be DH/fourth outfielder. So they even have their fifth outfielder in Travis Jankowski. On another team, I think he makes the opening day roster, but it was a solid spring for him, but just not quite good enough because this Rangers lineup is just too darn good. But what isn't quite too darn good at this point is the Rangers starting rotation. Because, again, for about the umpteenth time, no, not the 18 bajillionth time this offseason, I am saying the Rangers should bring back Jordan Montgomery. And for the first time, we're hearing from Bruce Bochy and Marcus Semien and basically every hitter saying, yeah, bring him back. Bring back Jordan Montgomery. Put him in a Rangers uniform right freaking now. Chris Young, ownership. We know you haven't cheaped out, but can you extra not cheap out with just this one guy we all want you to bring back? One of the telling quotes from this article was John Heyman saying that he talked to every player, and Marcus Semien confirmed that literally every player wants Jordan Montgomery back. A quote from Semien says, "Does everybody want to play with Jordan? Of course. He took us as far as we could possibly go, and we won. Just his performance in the wildcard series alone set the tone for our entire playoff push." Then he went to talk on about how great he was against Houston. And even Bruce Bochy was saying, yeah, no, we'd love to have Jordan Montgomery back. He said, we've had a lot of discussions. I don't make that call, but we have been very adamant about bringing him back. And Heyman said that basically every single baseball person, which I'm assuming means players, coaching staff, and maybe even front office as well, is saying, bring this guy the heck back right now. And it seems like there are not a whole lot of suitors left ready to go to whatever asking price Montgomery is holding at this point. It has been the offseason of Scott Boras taking rare L's on 3 of his major clients. Snell taking a shorter deal coming off a Cy Young season. Matt Chapman taking a much shorter and smaller deal. And even Cody Bellinger taking a very small deal relative to the season he just had and his MVP potential. And Jordan Montgomery is probably next on that list. Another fun, interesting point from this New York Post article is that Boston has been in discussions. Other teams have been in discussions. The Yankees are seemingly passing. The Red Sox don't really know where they're going, so they're not going to be as aggressive. And even the Cubs and Cardinals, who kick the tires, are seemingly out. And it seems like the Rangers are the last place that is left that wants Jordan Montgomery, that needs Jordan Montgomery. And so the fit just makes all the sense in the world. Apparently, the Astros are not going to pivot to Jordan Montgomery. A report in The Athletic said that they are not pivoting after missing out on Blake Snell. They were interested in Blake Snell. They didn't want to go to $30 million a year. And even though they have some injuries to Urquidy and to Justin Verlander, they're not about to go pivot to Jordan Montgomery. Which leaves the Rangers as the last best candidate, the first candidate that should have signed him. And this rotation without him looks still solid enough, I think, to definitely compete for a division. If not win the division, if not win the freaking World Series. Nate Eovaldi, your opening day starter, followed by John Gray, Andrew Heaney, Dane Dunning, Cody Bradford. It's fine. It's fine. Not spectacular, but good enough. And with this elite lineup and with the bullpen that I am honestly very encouraged by what I've seen this spring training and the options that they have in that bullpen, the trustworthy options, I feel pretty darn good about this team. But honestly, it has gone back and forth and back and forth. And I honestly have had the last few episodes, I've had my Twitter notifications open while I'm recording, just in case the Jordan Montgomery news breaks while I'm in the midst of recording. But knowing my luck, it'll probably happen as soon as I finish recording an episode talking about why Jordan Montgomery is never coming back here, because that's just how these things have gone in the history of this 5-year podcast. But still, I'm still holding out hope. I'm feeling that the Rangers have to be a team that is the favorite. And one last note that I found interesting from the New York Post article is when John Heyman was talking about the injured guys that are coming back in Scherzer, in Mahle, and DeGrom, talking about Max Scherzer, saying he might just be ahead of schedule, which would be very typical Max Scherzer, a guy who is just a maniacally hard worker who has not been injured very much in his career. He is projected to come back sometime in June. If he came back earlier than June, I would be nervous because, again, he's 39 years old and, backs are difficult and finicky things. And having surgery on your back at age 38, when he turns 39 this season, is a little troublesome. But hey, if the Rangers can get a little bit more out of Scherzer, there is infinitely less leverage that Boris has with Montgomery to say, hey, you need me so badly. Because I remember a quote from some Rangers person in Ken Rosenthal's article from, I think it was last week or might have been the week before, says, have you seen our first half rotation? Which was not a great look. And it seems like the Rangers are holding pat. And this is probably what their opening day rotation is going to look like. But again, with the way the market is right now, I would not be opposed. I would very much love to be wrong about this version 3 opening day roster projection, if only for Jordan Montgomery finally coming back to Texas. Coming up, we're going to talk about this bullpen, why there are a lot of options that I feel really darn good about. And even if I'm wrong about who I project makes the opening day bullpen, there are still so many choices, which is so much further along than they were this time last year. Right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. Usually, it's such a hassle buying tickets to anything, whether it's to Rangers opening day, whether it's to a Rough Riders game, whether it's to a Stars game, Mavs game, or whatever other kind of events you're going to. I mean, you never know what what's going to look like from your seat, how much it's actually going to cost you, but Gametime, it takes all that guesswork out. They let you know with all the fees included, like, all right, this is how much you're going to pay for your tickets. This is what it's going to look like. This is how you get it. It is so easy. The process is fantastic. I have never had a better experience buying tickets to anything than I have with the Gametime app. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Shout out to the editors for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be back doing the worst case scenario for the Rangers 2024 season. And then on Friday, of course, we will balance it back out with the best case scenario for the Rangers 2024 season. Now let's get to the bullpen, always the trickiest part of these opening day roster projections to project, because relievers are finicky, weird, unpredictable, usually sometimes unreliable, or sometimes at the time you need them most, the most reliable part of your team. And the Rangers have a lot of options for those bullpen spots. There's going to be about 7 of them in the bullpen. And the first 4, the most obvious 4, Jose Leclerc, who is going to open the season as the Rangers closer, Josh Sborz, World Series hero, excellent glove spiker, is also going to be on the opening day roster. David Robertson, new face, reliable face, cutter extraordinaire. He's always also going to be one of those late inning, high leverage relief options, and Kirby Yates as well. I haven't seen as much of David Robertson. He hasn't pitched as much in the Rangers A games, but there's been a decent chunk of Kirby Yates, and while the overall numbers aren't, sterling, I have really liked what I've seen from him. I have liked what I've heard from him in camp of him just feeling like he is somewhere back to where he was pre-injuries. Injuries have really derailed him basically since 2019 when he was the best closer on earth. And, again, he's not a guy who's reliant on a whole lot of velocity. It's more reliant on the command and the control, which is something that is the last thing to come back from Tommy John surgery. Usually that's the second year back. Last year was the first full year back and healthy. He had a lot of walk issues with the Braves, but still had those good strikeout numbers and wasn't bodied up too much by hard contact. But I think this year, they buying low on Kirby Yates was a smart decision. I'm feeling very good about it. And even if he's not, I'm not expecting him to be 2019 Kirby Yates. That's a lot to expect him to get back to peak form. But him being a pretty darn good reliever, I think is going to be very helpful for this team. Robertson is a high floor guy. You know pretty much exactly what you're getting. There's not a whole lot of risk of him being absolutely terrible. And even if he is, you still have three other guys in the back end of your bullpen that have got some really nasty stuff and some experience pitching in some high leverage games that you feel really darn good about for the most part. Then there's going to be Brock Burke. I think is going to be the obvious high leverage lefty for the Rangers. I don't know how much high leverage spots he's going to pitch in this year. Last year was definitely very disappointing for him. Allowed a lot more home runs than he did in the year before. Was not nearly as effective, but I'm still a believer in Brock Burke. I think Mark Church is also going to claim a spot in this opening day bullpen. I think it'd be really difficult to send him down. He's still got some minor league options, and there's still some things for him to work on, but he's a guy who can go multiple innings. The Rangers feel pretty good about that. Sits in the mid to upper 90s with his fastball all the way up to 97, and that slider, whoo boy, that slider might be the nastiest pitch in this Rangers bullpen. I think Leclerc's Slambio might be a little bit better, but still, that slider from Mark Church is nasty. The Rangers have been so impressed with him this camp, and I think the Rangers would be very hard-pressed to send him down to start the year. If they did, I don't think it'll be long before he is up and pitching, maybe in some of those high-leverage spots, maybe in some of those multi-inning spots, but I think the Rangers feel really, really good about him, and I feel really good about him as well. The next guy in this pen is going to be the long man, the prototypical long man, and I think that's going to be Jose Urena. I have been very impressed with what I've seen from him so far this spring. Only 3 games so far, but a 2.61 ERA, 9 strikeouts, just 2 walks in those 10 and a third innings. I have really liked what I've seen from him. I think that his rougher first stint of 2024 was not as indicative as who he is going to be. I mean, he had an ERA around 10 with the Rockies, but again, that's with the Rockies, and that'll happen. But with 26 and a third innings with the White Sox, he had a ERA of 4.10 in 5 games, and all 5 of those were starts. I think that's fine. I think that's a fine long relief pitcher, especially when the guy who you would rather be your long relief pitcher in Cody Bradford is going to start the season as your number 5 start in the rotation. I think Urena is the ideal guy to start this season as the Rangers' long man. There were some talks about Jack Leiter maybe being that, and I think Leiter would be more effective, but again, you're more concerned with Jack Leiter's long-term development than you are with Jose Urena's. And so starting the season as a long man, not pitching every 5th day would be not ideal for Jack Leiter. Talked more about him on yesterday's show, so go check that out if you want more my thoughts about how good Jack Leiter has looked this spring training. And then the last spot on this Rangers bullpen, I think that's going to go to Jacob Latz. Now, he's walked a few more guys than I really would have liked to see in this spring training, but the Rangers have pitched him a lot. They've pitched him in situations where he comes in with runners on base. They have been pitching him in a lot of different ways that they might use him in the regular season. He is another lefty, and of the lefties that are still in camp, I think I feel best about him making this opening day roster as a bullpen member. Is he going to stick around for the entire year? I don't really think so, but it's not like the Rangers are just going to go cut him. He's got options, and he provided some valuable innings last year towards the end of the season, and so I think he starts the season as the Rangers' second lefty in their bullpen. The other options are Chase and Shreve, who I have not been very impressed with this spring. There are also a couple other guys that I thought would get more of a look. Antoine Kelly, I really thought would get more of a look, but that's not happening apparently. Blake Taylor was a non-roster invitee that I thought might get a look, but 1 strikeout to 3 walks in 6 innings of work. That's not ideal. So I think that it is going to be Jacob Latz, no longer Jake. He is going by Jacob now. So Nathaniel Lowe sees that and raises his cap to Jacob Latz. But that's going to be this bullpen. Jose Leclerc, Josh Sborz, David Robertson, Kirby Yates, Brock Burke, Mark Church, Jose Urena, and Jacob Latz. That is a deeper group than last year. And again, there are some other options that I think will cycle throughout the season because that's how bullpens work. Grant Anderson has had a fantastic spring, a 0 ERA in 6 1/3 innings, and has not allowed a single walk and has struck out 7. I think he's definitely going to be up at some point this season and could play a decent role in the Rangers bullpen like he did last year, but maybe a little bit more effective. I've liked what I've seen from Yeri Rodriguez in spurts, but again, that's kind of the Yeri Rodriguez, moniker. I liked what I saw from him, and then I didn't like what I saw from him, and then I liked it again, and it's just inconsistent. If Yeri Rodriguez can be consistent, then he could be a back-end high-leverage bullpen guy because he touches all the way up to 99 with a lot of movement on that sinker, but there's times where he just gets absolutely lit up, and in a big league pen for a team that is contending, that's not ideal. Jesus Tinoco has had a pretty darn good camp, but again, I'm just not quite sold on him earning a spot out of spring training. I don't think he's quite there yet, even though he has been pretty impressive at times. Towards the beginning of the spring training, I thought, yeah, that's going to be a guy who breaks camp because he looked incredible. But now that the results are mattering more, because the results in spring training ultimately don't matter, but they start to matter more towards the end of spring training when you're starting to repeat everything and trying to actually pitch like it's a big league game that counts. That's when the results have been not as good for him, and I think Tinoco will probably see some time in the Rangers pen at some point this season, but at this point, not so much. But hey, just looking at this pen as a whole, how there are 4 guys that I feel very confident as solid high leverage relievers, whereas this time last year, I felt like okay about 2 of them. I'm like, all right, Will Smith, maybe. Jose Leclerc, maybe. And there was a whole lot less than maybe for most of the season last year. If this pen is just average, I mean, if last year's pen was average, the Rangers win like 95, 96 games. And this year, the rotation, I think, for the most part, will end up being cumulatively better because they will get more time from Max Scherzer, knock on wood. They will get time from Tyler Mahle, knock on wood. And they will hopefully get more than 6 starts and 30 innings out of Jacob deGrom, knock on wood yet again. But this lineup is going to be better. This team is going to be better. They are rolling in with the confidence of being World Series champs. And man, I am so ready for opening day, especially if the Rangers can prove me wrong on that starting rotation and bring back Jordan Montgomery, just like literally everybody outside of the guy cashing the checks has wanted all offseason long. Thank y'all so much for listening. I'll be back tomorrow, talk about the worst case and the best case on Friday scenarios for this Rangers season. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.